Alright, so today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest names in music, how he kind of fell off, and what was his life before his signing to Shady Records and his music career in general. So let's get started. Alright, so when I talk about him falling off, it doesn't necessarily mean that he fell off because he was making bad music or something else. For me, 50 Cent is a special case where 50 Cent himself was the cause. What I mean by that is I don't want to be killed by 50 Cent or get roasted on his Instagram, so please bear with me. So we're going to start from 1998 when he first got signed, 97, 98 when he first got signed to a major label. Well, a label. It was not a major label, but it was a label, music label. So according to him, one of his friends introduced him to the one of the members from Run DMC, which was Jam Master Jay, and he established Jam Master Jay Records. So 50 Cent was signed to that record, and I'm sorry, to that record label. And during the time he was signed there, Jam Master Jay from Run DMC taught him how to write hooks and how to count bars, because most of the rappers who come up who know how to rap are not actually familiar with all of the stuff. They eventually go on to learn all of this stuff on how to count bars and how to write hooks. These rappers naturally can spit verses, but most of the times they cannot write hooks, good hooks, much like The Game when he first came out and 50 Cent helped him write some hooks and get some of his biggest hits. Same was the case with 50 Cent when he first came out. So after 1998, in 99, 50 Cent signed to Trackmasters. Uh, Trackmaster was a producer. He signed him to Columbia Records, where according to them he produced 36 songs in 2 weeks. 8 of them were included on his 2000 mixtape, which was Power of the Dollar. So from there, 50 Cent eventually started his business career, where he founded his own label, which was Hollow Point Entertainment, with one of his former G Unit members. So of course 50 Cent has always been a controversial figure in hip hop, one of the funniest, if not the funniest rappers of all time, and one of the most entertaining rappers of all time, maybe one can argue. But his attitude was the same from day one. It has His sarcastic behavior has been toned down a little bit now, but back then he was very ruthless and he would do anything to you. So during 2000, he wrote a song which was How to Rob, in which he described how he would rob a lot of these famous artists and all of that. It was surrounded by a lot of controversy, and it led to him being a popular underground artist. So after that, he had a shooting, and he was shot several times. But from 2000 to 2002, in between these 2 years, he released several mixtapes. A lot of them were critically acclaimed, not very commercially successful, but he got a lot of buzz. And in 2002, Eminem heard 50 Cent, he signed him to one of his label, which was Shady Records. So after that, in between, he again released some of the mixtapes, and so I'm pretty sure this was before him launching his G Unit label. He released his debut album, debut studio album. It is a debut studio album. Well, it can be said that this is his major label debut, because he already released a studio album in 2000s. So it was not technically a debut album, and he has a lot of mixtapes before this album. So this album he released, it sold more than 872,000 copies in the first week. One of the biggest rap albums of all time, if not the biggest rap albums of all time, because everyone all over the world knew about this album, and people still talk about this album. So 872,000 copies. 50 Cent was on fire. He had his hit single In the Club. In the Club was one of those hits that crossed over to all over the world. Like, people here in Saudi Arabia know what In the Club is. They know the beat, they know the lyrics. They don't know what he's saying, but they know the beat and they know the lyrics. So after that, he of course launched his label. Interscope gave him his label, which was G Unit Records. He signed Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo and Young Buck as members of G Unit, and then later on, of course, Dr. Dre brought in the game. Dr. Dre, I've heard a lot of people say that Dr. Dre was very pissed at the game because he could not write hooks and he could not make hit songs. I'm not sure. I don't have any validity of this statement, but in 2004, they would record a lot of songs, but the hooks were the main problem with the game. So, uh, 50 Cent co-wrote on a lot of songs, well, a couple of songs on his debut album, The Documentary, which went on to sell the game's highest first week numbers, and a universal classic, of course. So, the biggest hit from that album, How We Do, this was again one of those hits that crossed over to the world. Everybody knows this um, single. So after his success, he signed the game. Then I'm fast forwarding a little bit here. So 2005, he gave him his album, and well, he co-wrote on a lot of albums, and then he went on. The game went on to pursue his own career without Dr. Dre or Aftermath or Shady or 50 Cent. So in 2006, he released his album Dr. Advocate, which went on to do very well commercially and very well critically as well. After that, the game has released several very, very good albums. So in 2007, 50 Cent was included in a kind of beef. Well, it was not a beef, it was a competition more so. In a competition with Kanye West, where he claimed or said that he would sell more records than Kanye West. Uh, a lot of people say that the label didn't back Kanye. I'm sorry, that label didn't back 50 Cent. So that might be the reason that 50 Cent didn't sold that many records, because he had somewhat beef with his own label. And I think Kanye and 50 Cent were signed to the same label. So on one hand we had Kanye West Graduation, on the other hand 50 Cent Curtis, both very highly anticipated albums. But the first week numbers came in, 50 Cent sold great numbers. So of course his last album sold like more than 1 million copies first week. It is one of the biggest first week numbers for a hip hop album. I think it is the second biggest behind this Eminem album, I'm not sure. So after that, he lost that battle. He lost significantly. Of course, his album I think sold 672. 50 Cent's album and Kanye's album went on to sell more than nearly 1 million copies first week. So he lost that battle. After that, so it is worth noting here that he also they both released the album on the same day. So they were technically fighting for the number one spot in the country. So after that, he took a hiatus from music, and in 2009 he released his album Before I Self Destruct. It had some production from Dr. Dre, but this was the time when 50 Cent started shifting his focus to other things. Now 50 Cent here, this is a time he started doing other ventures. So 2009 he started doing his ventures with VH1's Behind the Music, and around this time he also had a little tension with Jay-Z as well. But 50 Cent, he beefs with everyone, and I'm trying to focus on the music only, because as you have seen or as you have heard, that I have skipped over the major beefs he had, where he had a beef with Ja Rule, of course, and Cameron, in between this time as well. So he had a lot of beefs in between this time as well, but I skipped over these beefs because they are, in my opinion, not related to his music and his downfall. Well, a case can be made that 50 Cent was beefing with everyone, which led to the downfall of New York hip hop in general. And the downfall of New York hip hop led to 50 Cent not selling as much records as he would sell. And of course, Kanye came in, Cameron, Dipset, they came in. A lot of things were happening around that time. So 2009 he started his business career. Then on to 2011 he started doing. So this is also the time he had some problems with his label, Interscope, of course, and this is also the time he stepped into the SMS headphones he had. Um, so of course, in between this time, he kept releasing the mixtapes, but the mixtapes didn't help him that much because he kept announcing the release date for his album, and he kept changing his name, and he kept telling the news publications that he's working on this song and he's working with Eminem, Just Blaze, and he was kind of hyping the project up, but it didn't say the day of light for since at least for 4 years. Like he started hyping the project up in 2011. He changed the name a couple of times now, and then he in 2014 he released his album, which was Animal Ambition. It sold like nearly 50,000, of very very bad numbers for a guy like 50 Cent, who sold millions of records in the last decade. So in my opinion, 50 Cent shifted his focus to his business ventures more, and his label problems were there as well, but he didn't care about the label problems that much. He tried to find another way, and he was very successful in finding that way as well. Of course, SMS headphones, and then his other ventures, then Power with Star, and all of these acting opportunities he got, and his business ventures, all of that. But the thing about it is, 50 Cent has released so much music over the past few years that he doesn't need to release anything anymore. He has cemented himself as one of the greatest rappers of all time, in my opinion, and he doesn't have to do anything. And if someone came up to me tomorrow and said that he's the greatest rapper of all time, I don't think I would argue with them, because he has the content, he has the classic albums, so he has the numbers, he has the legacy, the impact all over the world. I would not argue. So the thing about it is, 50 Cent, shifted his focus again. He shifted his focus and he left music. Of course, in 2014 he released his last album. After that, he kept releasing some mixtapes and greatest hits albums, but I don't think anything worked out. He recently released his single with Jeremiah. That single is great. I have listened to it. I really like that song, but I don't think it got the attention it deserved, because if 50 Cent had put out this single back in like 2006-7, this would have been the hottest thing in hip hop ever. But it didn't catch fire. Nobody was talking about it that much, which was sad because the song was pretty great. And if 50 Cent puts out an album, of course I will go ahead and buy that album without listening, because I love 50 Cent. I love what he has done for the culture, for the people all over the world, not only in the US. He has impacted a lot of countries, namely countries like Saudi Arabia. If you come here in Saudi Arabia, on some walls it is written like, people have sprayed "Get Rich or Die Trying" or Tupac, and there are several names in hip hop that are so prevalent, all over the world, that people can even the people who don't listen to music can recognize some musicians, notably Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, 50 Cent. These are the rappers everybody knows who they are, and at least have listened to one of their songs. And in my opinion, the boost that the game got for 50 Cent, and what 50 Cent has done for the game's career initially, the game can never repay what 50 Cent did for him. The hits he had, notably How We Do, was such a big hit. I swear, like, people still to this day, a lot of people who don't even listen to hip hop music that much or don't even know hip hop music know that song, and they know that song because of 50 Cent. Not to say that the game was vague, the game was phenomenal and flawless on that song as well. And the game is one of my uh, favorite rappers, of course. But the thing is, the boost 50 Cent gave to the game was something that no one can repay. So there you have it. Of course, y'all have your own theories, and of course, I'm not from your country nor from New York City. So a lot of people who are actually from that area could explain a lot of things more detailed. But of course, as I mentioned, 50 Cent's downfall was not only because of his lack of concentration, but it was due to several reasons: his label disputes, the way how New York hip hop scene fell off, and how he beefed with everyone, and how he went on to pursue his business ventures. So there are, of course, a lot of things, and one of these things did play a major role in the downfall of 50 Cent's career. But as I mentioned before, I don't need any music for 50 Cent now. He has already cemented himself, and I hope he does the best. So for all of you watching, thank you very much for watching, and consider subscribing. I have a lot of other videos as well. I've just started making these kind of videos, so I hope y'all like it, and if you do, please subscribe to my channel. I actually share a different point of view than all of the other people, mainly because I'm not from the country and I'm not from the culture, to say. I'm from a different country with different upbringing, and I happen to be a fan of hip hop music. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great